Well, I think everyone who's in the waiting room is now joined, so we can get going. So a very good morning to everyone who has joined us for this webinar. My name's Geoff, and I have the privileged job of being the Artistic Director for the Royal Overseas League, which is a not-for-profit membership organisation with about 16,000 members all over the world. We are very lucky to have a clubhouse in central London with bedrooms and nice places to hang out, and bars and restaurants. And a very nice concert hall and exhibition space as well. And one of the things we've done for nearly 70 years is to support young creative talent at the start of their careers. Most well-known thing about us is our annual music competition, and it's an absolute pleasure to be joined today by Robert Plain, who is a clarinettist, and he won the gold medal in the competition in 1992, and then has gone on to have a really exceptional career. Major orchestral positions. He's played concertos all over the world, made recordings, he does chamber music and teaches as well. And this is an interesting time to chat with Rob, because he's about to make a bit of a change from being principal clarinettist with the BBC National Orchestra of Wales to become Head of Woodwind, the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. And so, Rob, thank you so much for joining us, and it's really nice to sort of start to get to know you a bit. I know we've been in touch a bit since I started 4 years ago, and of course you knew my predecessor, Roderick Lakin, very well.
Yeah, morning, Geoff, and morning, everyone. Yeah, I mean, I feel really privileged to have had such a long-lasting relationship with the league. I mean, as you say, from 1992 in the competition, and many tours and many concerts in association with the league ever since. And as you say, I mean, we've not known each other long, Geoff, but you know, you sort of feel the warmth of support from the organisation, whatever. And yeah, it's been really the happiest musical association of my career, I would say.
Well, that's wonderful, and we're going to chat about that a bit later, but we're going to start with something else. I thought. So we'll start with a little bit of music. So just to say, I have a few photos to show you and two short videos of Rob playing. Disclaimer at this point, it does depend on my internet connection and your internet connection at your end. But what I can say is that we will upload this to YouTube later with the videos patched in. So if they don't come through too clearly now, then you will be able to watch them later. The first one is only about 1 minute and 20 seconds, and the one slightly later is about 4 minutes. So if it isn't coming through, you can pop and get a coffee and then come back and we'll carry on talking. But for those of you who have been watching the news over the last few months, you might have seen Rob pop up because, well, Rob, why don't you tell us what you've been doing in your street?
Yeah, well, there was a social media call for musicians to join in the Clap for Carers on a Thursday night. And the initial week was to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. We really wanted to get involved with this, along with musicians all over the country. But we're very lucky here. We've got my wife, Lucy Gould, is a professional violinist. Our daughter, Flo, is a bassoonist at the Royal Academy of Music. But the icing on the cake is that our next door neighbours, Rosie Biss and Andre Swanepoel, are members of Welsh National Opera and the Irish Chamber Orchestra. So we've actually got a quintet with two neighbouring terraced houses on a Cardiff street. So we found a fantastic arrangement of Somewhere Over the Rainbow and played it. It was really well received on the street, but then we put it on social media, and it went pretty crazy. So it's had something like 120,000 views on Twitter, and it led to, I was on the Today programme on Radio 4 talking about it. It was broadcast on Radio 3, and then we ended up being featured in a BBC One documentary, which was Ross Kemp talking about Britain's volunteer army. So our sort of mission to, well, basically cheer people up. It's, you know, it started as a message of appreciation, but ultimately it was actually to give the street something to look forward to in terms of performance. And for us, of course, you know, we've had all our concerts cancelled. Every deadline we ever had disappeared. And so suddenly having this weekly performance to look forward to, and also actually to get nervous for, because we'd all get a little bit irritable and nervy on a Thursday afternoon. So all the perspectives changed. But it was still ultimately a performance, and indeed one that was viewed actually by many more people than a normal concert.
It's wonderful, and it's such a lovely little performance. So I wanted to share it. So let's give this a go. This is, oh gosh, my computer's going to be funny now. This hopefully will be somewhere over the rainbow. We'll take it back to the beginning, and here we go.
That's a real glimpse into my life in lockdown, actually.
Well, I mean, it's just wonderful, and you couldn't really have a more luxurious ensemble on your street, I think. So lucky neighbours.
Yeah, we feel it really kept our sort of musical spirits up at the beginning, actually. And funnily enough, we're actually very busy now doing various online projects. So in a way, the music hasn't stopped, but it's that appreciation that the audience is what it's all about. It's about connecting with people and making a difference. And I think that really just helped us tie over from this sudden shock that 1 minute I had a lovely concert playing Beethoven 3 with my orchestra in St George's, Bristol, and then literally the next day we get an email saying everything's cancelled for the foreseeable. So it was a big shock, and you sort of realise at times like this, as I'm sure we all have, that music is such a part of our identities, or our profession is such a big part of our identities, and to have it taken away. And to be one of the people that really, really can't work from home in terms of playing in an orchestra. It was good for the spirits, for the street in many ways, I think.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, let's talk a bit about your sort of background then. I'd love to know sort of how you came to music and the clarinet in the first place, and sort of how your studies went, in your childhood.
Yeah, well, I started off like many kids learning recorder at school, and then progressing onto the clarinet. I think perhaps the most important connection when I was young was a new peripatetic teacher that moved to my area, which was just outside Great Yarmouth in Norfolk, and he was a former army bandmaster, Barry Carbon, and he wasn't a clarinettist; he was a bassoonist. But he was just the most inspiring musician that I could have met at that time. So I was aged 13, I think. He was a fantastic teacher, but he also, would be at a lesson and he'd put on a Brahms symphony for me to listen to, or he'd encourage me to go to concerts. And, that was something we didn't particularly have a tradition of doing in my family at that time. So it just made the world of difference. And then he encouraged me to apply for Cheetham School, which I didn't really know anything about at the time. And I got in there, and even though that was a big shock for me, coming from a very small kind of community in Norfolk, I think it was probably the most important move of my training, for sure. I then went on to Bristol University, which was fantastic for an all-round education in music. And it was there that I started lessons with Thea King, who again has had a lovely long association with the Royal Overseas League.
Yes.
And she was just such an inspiration, incredible inspiration.
So did you travel to London for those lessons?
Yes, it was only once a month.
Yeah.
And she was an unconventional teacher, really. I mean, I don't remember her ever discussing technique at all, but she would sit at the piano. She was an amazing pianist.
Yes.
She famously recorded a multi-track, the Brahms clarinet sonatas on both parts, well ahead of the times when multi-tracking has become incredibly fashionable and everybody's at it. So she was a really gifted pianist, and she would just sit at the piano and sort of emanate musicianship. It was really extraordinary. You'd leave the lesson feeling incredibly inspired, but you never quite knew why. And I think that's probably the sign of just an extraordinary teacher. I then went on to the Royal Academy of Music and had 2 similarly wonderful years with Angela Molesbury, who's continued to be a huge support and inspiration ever since those times, and we're still in regular contact. So I've been very lucky in the musicians that I've met. And then I auditioned for the Northern Sinfonia when I was in my last year as a postgrad at college, and ended up getting that job and starting it within 4 months. So it was a very...
You didn't hang around, did you?
No, it was very quick. And this was kind of only 6 months after the Royal Overseas League final. And again, just one of the great things about winning or indeed being involved in the final of that competition is that you suddenly get invited to do so many things. I mean, 1 minute nobody had heard of me, and the next minute I was getting a call saying, did I want to come and do a trial for BBC Symphony Orchestra? And I sort of found myself sitting there playing Elgar 1 in the proms and being terrified because I'd never had any experiences like this. But it just opened so many doors, for which I'm forever grateful.
So actually, let's talk about the Roswell competition then for a bit. Can you sort of remember your experience of, the first rounds and who was on the panel? And
Well, funnily enough, actually, my great friend and duo partner of many years, Sophia Rahman, was playing for me, and she'd been involved in the competition for quite a few years before and played for Phil Dukes, Cleo Gould, lots of successful entrants. But when the week came round for the first round of the competition, I'd been offered a whole run of trial work at Welsh National Opera. And it was a kind of do all the work or do none of it sort of issue. And I came really, really close to pulling out of the competition. But so very kindly spoke to Roderick and again, I'm forever grateful. She said, I really think you should hear him. Is there anything you can do? So they stuck me at the end of the day so that I could get back from Wales in time. And then, we, got through the first round and then on and on. And then I just remember, the final was such an exhilarating experience to be in the Queen Elizabeth Hall, incredibly distinguished rivals for the prize, including Paul Lewis, the pianist, who I had known from Chetham's actually. Yeah. But it was just a time of incredible sort of thrill, and I played the Debussy Rhapsody in the final. All I can really remember is just the hush and the large audience, and just sort of feeling I was out of any sort of comfort zone I'd been in, but that I liked it, and it was really, really exciting.
It does feel like a real event, doesn't it, at the Queen Elizabeth? And it's a big hall to play in.
Yes, I mean, it was daunting in many ways. And actually, I can't remember the exact year, but I guess 6 or 8 years ago, I was on the panel for the competition, which was, wonderful to have come full circle and to witness it from the other side. And it's only really then that you realise what a big deal this is for these students. I mean, obviously, everyone appearing in the final is the winner of their section, and they invariably go on to fantastic careers. But I think that's the interesting thing about ROSL in a way, is that you are comparing pianists, wind players, string players, and singers in a way that not many competitions do. So I think there's much more emphasis on looking for the musician rather than the instrumentalist, and someone that can really communicate. And
Yes.
I think that gives it a very special vibe, and also cultivates. My ethos of teaching is always that you're going to learn more probably from string players than you are from wind players, or
Yes.
more from singers. So it's all cross-departmental, and we're all musicians together, and I think that's the spirit that the competition has.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Schumann describes it as a fruit salad competition. But an interesting BBC Young Musician competition is modelled on it. They came and sort of examined the competition in the late 70s, and that's why it's not a dissimilar
Right.
format. And it is interesting and very hard judging the gold medal final when you do have a bass trombonist against a violinist against a baritone.
Yes, I remember that experience, and also obviously because of the repertoire, because our string and piano colleagues, especially, well, and the vocalist, have such an amazing repertoire at their disposal. But that said, as clarinettists, we fare quite well, I would say.
There's some good stuff, yeah. Well, I have a photo here to share. I don't know if this was the gold medal evening or another time. You can tell us, but of course there's Sophia Rahman as well next to you.
Yep, this was it wasn't at the final, actually. This was at an event at Clarence House, which was basically there are invitations from people all over the Commonwealth, all kinds of musicians. So Sophie and I were the sort of relatively feeling straight-laced representatives of the UK, because alongside us we had nose flute players from Tonga, and Inuit singers, and all sorts. It was an incredible evening of music of absolutely all sorts, and amazing outfits and dress, and just a real eye-opener. Really the world coming together through music. So it was a very special evening.
That's great. And one of the things that we chatted about when we had a little catch up yesterday was what happens after the competition with ROSL, and what sort of makes us a little different from a lot of the other schemes and competitions for young musicians. And of course you won in 1992 and knew Roderick Lakin very well. And one of the things that I've tried to continue, and we always will, is that sort of ongoing support over decades. And it's so, you wrote to me after I started the job, and we sort of kept in touch a little bit, but it's really nice to sort of, formalize that a bit more and get to know you properly. But tell us more about sort of your involvement with ROSL over the years after the competition happened.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that, we're here having this chat today is testament to that, really, because we're talking nearly 30 years. So it's a long time to maintain an association. I think for me, probably the whole opening of opportunities into the world of chamber music was something that was, fantastic for me. The Kreutzer String Quartet had won the ensemble prize the year before, so we were paired up for lots of Brahms quintets, and the league promoted many concerts at really distinguished festivals. I really remember Brighton Festival very well with them, Arundel Festival. So it was really, suddenly found myself playing to so many contacts, but also meeting many more musicians to play chamber music with. It's very easy as a wind player to get sucked into just orchestral playing, and I adore playing in orchestras, and I would never have wanted to missed out on that. But the chamber music has always been my real passion, so I think it opened all those kind of opportunities, and indeed continued through the league for years. I had two really memorable tours. The first to New Zealand, with Sophia Rahman again, and with cellist Alice Neary. And as you know, there's a happy happy memory.
Yeah.
That was one of Roderick's specialities, was certainly finding out somewhere good for lunch.
He was an expert at that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
just
so that was a lovely winery that he lined up for us. Obviously not on a concert day, I would think.
well. So
So
then we have Sophia Alice and then Keith and Lynn Milne, who are our directors in New Zealand. Lynn is about to retire. And then Margaret and Roderick Lakin on the right-hand side of the table, and then you.
And I'm proudly wearing my T-shirt that I'd bought when we went whitewater rafting the day before, which was possibly extremely reckless. And I'm sure I didn't help Roderick and Margaret to have a relaxed tour with little escapades like that.
Yes, I've had one with the Ferrier Quartet where 3 of them went bungee jumping, and then we did I can see on your T-shirt it says shot over, so we did the shot over jet, this kind of little jet boat. Which goes extremely fast. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they had a concert that evening, but they all made it through. So
I think that's the hard thing in your position, isn't it? It's sort of indulging musicians' desires for excitement, but also being realistic about. I just remember actually going to play in a recital that evening, and I was chatting to one of the audience members and said that we'd been whitewater rafting, and he said to me very seriously, "Well, not everybody comes back from those trips." And it was sort of then that it dawned on me that maybe we shouldn't have done that.
Yes, it's wonderful, the New Zealand tour, isn't it? So you probably did 9 or 10 concerts around the country.
Yes, it was very busy, but also incredibly interesting venues. I know one that you've been to, Geoff, is the amazing Victorian house in
Oamaru.
Oamaru, that's
so
it.
We still have a small branch in Oamaru in New Zealand, and his name has gone out of my head, but they run a bed and breakfast in Oamaru, which is a Victorian house. It was designed by architecture students in the UK, but then built in New Zealand, and it's absolutely charming. And Oamaru has a Victorian festival every year, where many of the residents of the town dress up in Victorian clothing. And we certainly did, the Ferrier Quartet did a concert there where the entire audience was in Victorian costume. It was absolutely wonderful.
No, it's extraordinary. And also the piano museum on Waiheke Island.
Yes, that's Whitaker's Musical Instrument Museum.
Yes, which was amazing to see these historical pianos being so loved and cared for. So that they were all, so many special concerts really there. And again, that's what the league does so well. You're just meeting such a cross section of people that have a common interest through music, but just incredibly interesting people in all walks of life. So that was a wonderful, memorable tour. Actually, it was at the early days of my passion for running, and I did my first ever half marathon whilst I was on that tour.
Right.
So that was quite a moment as well.
Gosh.
And then later on, the amazing tour to Sri Lanka for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting there. And there we are with Ashan Pillai, the viola player.
Who has also been in touch recently as well.
Right. He was, again, a colleague of mine from Royal Academy of Music, and we played in a septet called Mobius for many years together. And this was the gala performance for Prince Charles, who was representing the Queen at that event. And again, it was a fantastic mix of, this was the sort of highlight of the concerts, but we also went there in partnership with the Commonwealth Resounds, who had students from Chetham's, from ROSL School and the Royal Academy of Music, doing incredible workshops for children of all sorts, but largely underprivileged children. And, to see these young students, age 18 to 21, really blossoming and dealing with actually very difficult situations, but sharing their enthusiasm for music and really making a difference.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I haven't done a CHOGM, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting yet. My first one was in London, rather boring.
Bad luck.
And then, of course, this year it was cancelled, which would have been in Rwanda.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get a nice tour there at some point. So let's just talk a bit, before we have some more music, let's talk about orchestral playing. As you already mentioned, that you quite soon after your studies you joined Northern Sinfonia up in Gateshead.
Yeah.
And was the Sage must have been going by then. So
No, the Sage wasn't actually. The Sage was still a dream. I mean, though I was in Gateshead, we were very much in Newcastle actually when when I was there.
in the town hall.
And when I left in November 1999, the plans for the Sage were pretty concrete and were very likely to happen. But it was a difficult time to choose to leave actually, because obviously it promised so much excitement. During my time, our concerts were in Newcastle City Hall, you know, which was nothing to write home about as a concert venue particularly. And yeah, all these exciting developments were popping up in the quayside there. But it was basically the love or the desire to play the big symphonic repertoire that I felt I really had to do. So I moved to the BBC National Orchestra of Wales in November of that year, 1999. And yeah, here I am nearly 21 years later, loving living in Cardiff, loving the culture here and the distinct identity actually, which I hadn't really appreciated before I moved to Wales, but the rich culture of language especially. And my children have gone through Welsh language schools, so they're really immersed in it. And it's been a lovely chapter of our lives.
Being the BBC Orchestra in Wales, you must have played a lot of Welsh orchestral music over the years. Any composers that stand out that we may not have heard of, or any pieces that you would recommend having a listen to?
Well, I mean, people will have heard of Alan Hodderknott, but he's significant in that he was the major supporter, really, of the orchestra. He had a long association, and our studio is now named to BBC Hodderknott Hall in his memory. So he was incredibly supportive of the orchestra. But actually, other composers of interest, in particular, Grace Williams, who again is honoured in the hall with our smaller space studio, is the Grace Williams studio. And she was very much a pioneering woman in Wales. And we've played a lot of her music, symphonic tone poems, a trumpet concerto we've played, and actually chamber music as well, which is now starting to sort of resurface. You know, there's a lot of interest in these kind of composers. And obviously, living Welsh women composers as well. So especially Rhiannon Samuel, we've recorded some wonderful music by her. So I would say also Dan Jones, William Matthias. I think we do a great service really for Welsh composers, and also composers that are coming through. So every year we have a Welsh Composers Showcase where people submit scores, and they can be at any stage in their career. Some are students, some might be well advanced in their careers, but they have the opportunity to have their pieces played in a workshop with our composer in association, Hugh Watkins, who was fantastic at that and a real
also a ROSL winner.
And then an evening performance of all the works. So I think, and actually this is something that's continued during lockdown. I mean, some of you may have seen on the BBC National Orchestra of Wales social media posts that there have been a series of commissions from up and coming composers to write pieces for solo instrument that we've all recorded in our homes. So that's been a really interesting selection of pieces that I was lucky enough to be involved with. So they're well worth checking out. So that work carries on for sure.
That's great. And there must have been some memorable performances and tours over those years, presumably various proms, where you get to do really large scale works.
Yes, I mean, there's obviously been a lot because we do 4 or 5 a year, and I've been here for 20 years. And I've done almost all of them. I think we did a Rachmaninoff 2 with conductor laureate Tadaki Otaka, who is the most wonderful musician, so instinctive and humble, and you have all the things that you want to see in a person that's standing there, encouraging you rather than dictating to you. So I would say that was probably my most memorable. We did some fantastic British proms with Richard Hickox during his time, amazing Belshazzar's Feast with Bryn Terfel. And I remember, yeah, fantastic Nielsen 5 with Thomas Zondergaard when he was principal conductor. So proms were always exciting. We've also toured. I mean, I was lucky enough to be soloist in Mozart Clarinet Concerto on a tour of China, and played it in Beijing in the amazing Performing Arts Centre there, which was also brought a live stream to countless millions of people. So that was very much on a large scale and culturally really interesting place to visit. And we also had a really wonderful tour to South America, and in particular to Patagonia, to celebrate the anniversary of the Welsh settlers arriving in Trelew there. And again, to be welcomed in Argentina by the granddaughter of one of the original settlers, speaking in her sort of Spanish twinged Welsh, was really, really amazing. So that was definitely one of the highlights of our tours, I would say.
Wonderful. Well, I think we should have a little bit more music. So do you want to introduce, we're going to have the first movement of this next piece. I'll let you introduce it.
Yes, well, this is another one of my little lockdown activities. And actually it's led maybe to something we'll talk about in a bit. But my festival, which I run in Corbridge, has been forced out of the concert hall, the live church this year, but is going to be online. And some of the repertoire we're playing is already recorded, some of it's in process. And this piece we'd like to listen to now is me playing with my daughter, Flo, will be going into her third year as a bassoonist at the Royal Academy of Music. That's been one of the real joys of lockdown, actually. I think it's been tough for her being at home with us all these weeks, but we've had a really nice musical experience. And this is just one of the things we've played. It's a movement from Beethoven's first duo.
Okay, let's give this a go. So here we go. This is about 4 minutes. There we are, lovely. That was the first movement of Beethoven's first duo for clarinet and bassoon, which are, they're really cute little pieces, actually, aren't they? And not played very much.
No, they're very, very sweet and perfect for a little bit of lockdown fun, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember having a go at them at music college with a friend um, as well. Yeah, they're great. I was let's talk a bit about recording, because you've done a lot of recordings over your career. And I was mentioning to you yesterday that I remember my mum and dad buying a CD when I think I was about 16 or 17, about to go off to university, and it's your recording of the Finzi Concerto with Northern Sinfonia, which I played sort of non-stop, really, because I just think it's the most beautiful recording of that piece, and I would encourage everyone watching to go and seek it out. And then you sort of went, "Oh, that was years ago." I thought.
No, thanks for the kind words. Firstly, I mean, it was a dream come true, really, at that stage of my career to be able to record this piece that I, loved for so long. I mean, I think that was the one work I really, really remember taking to Thea, and she was incredible with as a teacher. Obviously, she was married to Frederick Thurston, who gave the premiere of that piece. And, in the course of the lesson, she went over to her bookshelves and pulled off Thurston's part with all his original markings. And that sort of connection with the history of British clarinettists and its, the music of our country, it really hit me particularly then. And that was something that I loved. So, having the chance to record the Finzi was very, very special. But equally important was that it opened the chance to explore other repertoire. So I've spent a lot of my career unearthing or bringing back to life works which had been, long forgotten, really, in some cases never performed. And this has culminated actually in a CD project which is being released at the end of this month of concertos by Ian Hamilton, Ruth Gipps, and Richard Walthew. And these are all incredibly deserving works of being played. The Hamilton won the Royal Philharmonic Society prize in the 1940s, but then just totally disappeared. The orchestral parts were all lost, and it just hadn't been played for 50 years. And it's a really, really wonderful piece. Very much like Walton in many respects, aspects of Stravinsky and Bartók, kind of its time, but really worth playing. And I've just loved. I mean, these projects make a real difference because these works really would disappear and never be heard. And what I think is obviously, the greatest performers in the world are very happy to record their Mozart concertos lots of times, and of course that's wonderful. But I've never felt that was where my real area of interest lay. There's so much undiscovered music, and it's not.
In that sense, you've sort of picked up the mantle a bit from Thea King, haven't you? And sort of, bringing these pieces to the fore.
Yeah, I mean, she was an incredible pioneer in this, and also she was obviously instrumental in composers writing for her as well, and especially her early recordings of John Ireland and Herbert Howells, for example. That just wonderful examples of her craft. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to think. I mean, I dedicated my recording of the Stanford Concerto to Thea not long after she died, and it in a real sort of tribute to how much she meant to me, and how that love of the tradition really passed on to me. So I feel really tireless with this aspect of things, actually, because I mean, this last CD was really, it was 5 years in the making. It was researching repertoire. It was raising all the funds, commissioning orchestrations, and you know, but the upside is, you know, you're, as I said, you're making a difference, but you're also meeting the composers' families. I've worked closely with with Joseph Holbrook's grandson, for example, and on this disc with Richard Walthew's two of his grandsons. So I love the feel of being a part of where this country's music's come from, and also where it's going.
Were any of these pieces published and available to buy, or have you had to source the printed or the sheet music manuscripts?
Well, Shot Publishers had a copy of the manuscript score of the Hamilton, but again, no parts, no clarinet part, no orchestral parts. So we raised the funds to make that possible. And they were very excited about this project, actually. I mean, you know, it stands to reason that if the parts aren't available, then a piece won't be played, however deserving. So I think, you know, between lots of people's enthusiasm, we've made a difference here. And well, certainly there are plans to perform the Hamilton Concerto in 2022, which is his centenary year.
So this recording is with the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra.
It is, yes. I mean, Hamilton was a Scottish composer. He moved to England very young, early in his life, but he really kept his connections with Scotland, and this BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra in particularly, and actually the Scottish National Orchestra, all gave huge service to his music. So it felt like a natural home, really. Recording it in Glasgow City Halls, it just felt the right place. It's a wonderful hall at the best of times, but it just felt like the orchestra had this music in their bodies. They played. I think they had a similar relationship with him as my orchestra would have with Hoddenot, for example. You know, it's a style that they're really comfortable with, and they sound absolutely glorious on the CD.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to hear it. I was searching for it thinking it had already been released, but it's not yet out, is it? So
consider it in the post.
We all have
I've got some advanced copies.
I can't wait. Yeah. And by the way, just in the last few minutes, if anyone does have any questions for Rob, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I will pass them on. I just want to ask a bit about your new role coming up, and the role generally of conservatoires, and maybe how you're about to take over as Head of Woodwind, or you have taken over as Head of Woodwind at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, which is a wonderful college set in the grounds of, is it Butte Park in?
Yes.
In Cardiff. The outlook actually is the most beautiful, really, of the colleges, I think. And they really have felt to me like for the last sort of 10, 15 years that they've really been on the up. They've got beautiful new concert hall, the Dora Stutska Hall. And so it's probably a really exciting time to be taking over. Do you have any sort of particular ideas or plans for the role? It might be too soon for you. Yeah, but you're already planning, I'm sure, for the future. Yeah,
always thinking ahead. No, it's a really dynamic team, actually, and a very exciting time to join. Helena Gaunt has joined as principal, and Tim Rhys-Evans, who many of you will know from his work with Only Men Allowed and Only Boys Allowed, which is an incredible charity here in Wales, just enabling choirs to come together and develop as people through singing chorally. So Tim's very connected with the communities here, and that's something I feel really, really strongly about. So that's going to be a major priority. Working at grassroots level, so thinking pre-college, against all the odds, trying to maintain that tradition of kids having instruments accessible to them.
Yeah.
But obviously the other aspect of my job is really just to inspire these students. I mean, this is a very difficult time for us all in the creative arts, and if nothing else, these last 3 months I've learned how adaptable we need to be. 3 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to edit videos for an online festival, for example, but I've had to learn. And I think that the students coming through now are really aware that flexibility is the key to their future employment.
Do you think that's a significant difference between when you or even I left music college, that sort of the need to be sort of an entrepreneur as well as to have constant, it's such a sort of concentrated environment in a conservatoire, and you really focus on, your instrument and your musicianship. And I mean, I don't know what it was like when you were at conservatoire, but although I sort of had a natural instinct for what the career was going to be like, I didn't really know until I left college the sort of challenges of a career as a musician. And I wonder whether conservatoires will have to adapt in the future to that kind of training.
I think there's a lot more preparation for students these days. I mean, I only went to conservatoire as a postgrad and had been at Bristol University. So I suppose I was lucky to have a broader education. I mean, in those days at conservatoires, it was largely performance-based, and you didn't leave with a degree. So these days, the curriculum's very broad. They learn lots of skills, and they leave with a really valued degree in music. And I certainly know that employers value a music degree for the amount of commitment and versatility and sort of skills of communication that those degrees involve. So, whilst we see as difficult times for the profession, I think the aspects of training that they benefit from are going to be in value or valued by employers of all sorts. And I think, I think there's a more hands-on approach. There's more, there's certainly outreach opportunities to go into schools and to deprived areas and into care homes, all sorts of things, which just hadn't really been thought about, I think, in my day. And, it only takes one positive experience in one of those places to change somebody's career, to encourage a student to go off in a different direction. I mean, there are so few places in orchestras, it's all very well training up, 40 clarinettists nationwide from conservatoires, but there aren't that many posts. Yeah. And, of course, there's active freelance career. But I think, we call it today a portfolio career, but I think that's something I always aimed at, because I just doing one thing somehow was never enough. So, I didn't sort of have a portfolio career because I had to, particularly because I could have just played in the orchestra and had a nice life, but I wanted to feel more broadly involved in music and the arts in general. But I think these days it's definitely part of the training that's to be expected and also of a huge benefit.
So, what would your advice be for sort of young clarinettists you'll be coming up to auditions towards the end of the year, and we obviously hope that they will be able to be done live. What sort of things are you looking for when you're auditioning young clarinettists?
Well, I think one thing that Welsh College traditionally has done really well is spotting raw talent. It's not about where you are, it's about where you can be. And I think the rate of progress that we see of students entering first year and then how they are when they get to 40 is really, really astonishing. So I think what we're always looking for, and again, this is obviously the same in Roswell competition, is admittedly there you'll expect technical perfection as well, but it's about communication and love of music. And I think even somebody with a rusty technique aged 18, if you come in and play like you can't do anything else, this is your calling in life, and you really have something to say about the music, and you're sincere and honest, hardworking. They're the values, because we're not auditioning people that are fully formed. We're just looking for blocks of stone which we can carve into final products. And I think that's really exciting, spotting that and witnessing it blossom. And I think it's that really that's encouraged me to take on this role. I've been involved in so many aspects of the profession for a long time, and I've taught at the Welsh College for a long time as well. But I really feel now at the right sort of stage in my life, so alongside the chamber music, I can have this nurturing kind of role and guiding the next generation, and sharing the things that have worked for me and the things that haven't.
I think that they're very lucky students to have you as their head of department, because you have experience of every aspect of it, and you haven't sort of rested on your laurels, but you've done sort of the research and the sort of slightly academic side of unearthing these works, and you've recorded and you've done the chamber music, and it's a really great aspect that the students will benefit from your experience in that. And
hopefully I can sort of lead by example, and they will see that there are various strands that you can either pursue independently or put together. But it's the days have gone of success and career coming to you. You've got to go out there and grab it, and you've got to have the passion to do that, as well as the talent.
Well, it's really exciting, and one of the nice things about us linking up is the potential for what we can do between ROSL and the Royal Welsh, and we're already sort of cooking up plans for potential concerts in the hall, and connecting with our members in South Wales as well, and inviting them along. So lots of potential. Last thing, I've got a question for you that's come through, but I just want to talk about your Chamber Music Festival, which you mentioned earlier in Corbridge. How long has that been going?
Well, we started it in 1999, so it's run myself and the Gould Piano Trio. Of course, Lucy Gould is my wife, so we've been playing together for many years. So we started the festival in summer 99, and then promptly moved all the way down to Cardiff. So in 2000, we decided we'd give it one more go. We'd see how it developed, and of course the audiences were much bigger, and we really enjoyed it. And then so we thought, we'll come back for one more year. And now this summer was to be our 23rd festival. So it's been a wonderful, to be able to create something from nothing, and then to play all the pieces of your dreams has been amazing. Sadly, this year the church won't be open in time for live concerts, but we've come up with a really wonderful alternative program. All the original musicians and indeed poet, dancer and composer in association are going to be represented, and the whole new programme is available on the corbridgefestival.co.uk website, and it'll be streamed in real time on YouTube, so anybody in the world can access it. And it'd be lovely to see people join us. There's a huge range of music, from Bach to Boulez. So there's something for everyone.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't wait to tune in. And that's the 24th to the 26th?
24th to 26th of July, and concerts all different times of day. We had planned a really interesting historical guided walk around Corbridge for our supporters, but we're going to have a virtual armchair one as well. So there's all sorts of activities. Do check it out.
That's great. I've got one question for you. If I was more competent at Zoom, I could probably put him on and ask him to do it, ask him himself. But I'll read it out for you. This is from Jasper Dommett. And it says, "Hi Rob, I've been very fortunate enough to see you perform a number of times and actually work with you as a composer through BBC's Composition Wales. I was just wondering, in relation to Mark Bowden's clarinet concerto, what do you think the main difference between playing as a soloist with an orchestra in comparison with playing as a soloist within the orchestra in, say, a large orchestral piece?" He's also looking forward to you being head of woodwind at the Welsh. So difference in solo playing.
Yeah. Hi, Jasper. That's good to hear from you, and thanks for coming along. Well, in many ways, I don't think there is so much a distinction. I mean, I think these are all branches of the same sort of creative effort, in a way. I mean, standing up in front of your own orchestra brings a huge responsibility. I feel, it's a privilege, and one that, you should never take lightly. I mean, that said, I think, for me, that's a more natural habitat than I'd be more nervous about playing the solo in Rachmaninoff 2, for example. So I sort of feel very comfortable at the front. in terms of Mark's concerto, I mean, Mark's it's such a vivid, wonderful piece which he wrote for me in 2018. And funnily enough, actually, this is a piece that's inspired by marathon running. That's another slightly interesting Royal Overseas League connection. Is that on 3 of my 4 London marathons, I stayed at Overseas House prior to the race, and it was perfect for the sort of pre-carb loading.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a slight aside, but. Yeah, I think it just sort of intensifies the drama standing at the front. But I mean, when it's a new piece in particular, obviously that's a huge weight of responsibility as well. That was a world premiere. I mean, we are planning to record that piece. But I think I don't see so much distinction between sitting in a clarinet quintet or in the section or at the front, because actually, as a principal wind player in an orchestra, you're incredibly exposed in any case, and you're playing solo lines. I mean, in many cases, the most beautiful solo lines ever written for the instrument. So in a way, you sort of projecting a melody from the back of the orchestra is harder. You have to work really hard for contrast and for character. But I think it's the sort of package of all those things that's kept me going, really.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much an hour. I mean, we could probably go on all day, really, couldn't we? Put clarinetists together in the room. But
quite.
But Rob, it's so nice to chat with you this morning.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
To make a new friend, and we really look forward to working more with you and forging links between ROSL and the Royal Welsh. And as we said yesterday, there will at some point soon, I'm sure, be a concert from Rob in the hall at ROSL as well. We'll look forward to that. So thank you so much. And that's it. We'll say goodbye for now.
Thanks, Geoff. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.